that Hillary Clinton is the strongest Democratic candidate to take on the Republicans. It is not true.
Okay, so I think that Bernie Sanders should stay in the race, and in no way would encourage him to drop out. I think he's building up leverage within the party for these issues. But this is a ridiculous argument, right? I mean, the argument that he's ahead of Donald Trump in head-to-head matchups now, and also the kind of related argument that he has higher favorability ratings than I think any of the candidates, higher net favorability ratings, completely doesn't take into account the fact that he has been subject to basically no negative advertising. He's been subject to hardly any opposition research. Hillary Clinton has been and kind of tread very gingerly around attacking Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was an elector for the Socialist Workers' Party, a party that calls for the elimination of the military. And on the one hand, I wouldn't, whatever it was 30 years ago, that is something that would be just murderous in a general election.
Right. You're talking about the politics, the
right.
straight
And so
politics
what I'm
of that
saying is that none of this stuff has been aired, and maybe none of it needs to be aired because he still seems to be very, very unlikely to close the gap with Hillary Clinton. But so he should stick. I think he should stick around. I think he's had a totally salutary effect on this race, on Hillary Clinton in terms of pushing her to the left. But I hope that people watching this don't get the idea that this is actually going to happen.
Well, your point is he's making that argument, but he's only been in a one-front war, not a two-front war. And Joy, look at the national numbers. If your argument against Hillary Clinton is how will she do against the Republican likely nominee, well, here she is against Trump, 54-36. Here she is against Cruz, the other most potential nominee under delegate math, 51-42. The only warning spot is from Kasich, who actually, interestingly, does surge ahead. These are totally early and hypothetical. But it doesn't seem, when you look at those numbers today, Bloomberg Politics March poll, it doesn't seem to be the greatest argument to say, well, Hillary Clinton can't handle these guys.
Right, and I think that Michelle just made the most important point, which is that even Kasich's number there, he's somebody who's been subject to almost no negative advertising other than the name calling a little bit here and there on the Republican side. Absent a campaign, you can't know what someone's unfavorable versus favorables would be in the fall. And even Bernie Sanders' own supporters are highly resistant to any information that would suggest his lack of electability, meaning that any attempt to broach any of the issues from his past would be met with such an incredible torrent of negativity from his supporters that no one dares even bring it up, right? Even a rather mild story in the New York Times that talked about his time on a kibbutz that was a very, liberal sort of socialist, very extremely socialist kibbutz was met with just this horror and cries of potential anti-Semitism. So the point is, the Clinton campaign has been very, I think, smart not to attempt to vet Bernie Sanders and not to negatively advertise against him. They don't want to alienate his supporters. At the same time, we have no idea how Bernie Sanders would fare in a fall campaign because no one has seen what negative advertising against him would even look like.
Michelle's point.
He's not fighting a one-front war, he's fighting a no-front war.
So, Governor, to that point, look, these are the Trump numbers that we could put up against Sanders. It is 58-34. Is that a made-up number? Is that, as the analysts here are suggesting, a little skewed? Or is that something that, as a Democrat who may support Clinton, you say, well, that's a nice backup plan?
And in some ways, all of these numbers are meaningless. We're not in a general election campaign.